Good evening, and let me share with you something interesting. Hosea 14:3. Assyria cannot save us. We will not mount war horses. We will never again say our gods to what our hands have made. For in you the fatherless find compassion. Now, I just finished doing one of my in-depth studies for going on our all access subscription site. And it opened up some areas of thought that I'd kind of like to just share with you who probably are not part of the all access. You can get a better depth of all this if you do join our all access. But other than that, I just want to give you a little taste of it here, of something that I found interesting on this. You know, for one thing, let's give a little historical background to this verse. Assyria was a nation, a very powerful nation that was threatening to invade Israel. And then it says, we will not mount our horses. And what that meant, well, the Egyptians were very powerful, was also a powerful nation who had war horses and chariots. And historically at this time, Assyria and Egypt were saber rattling, with each other. They were threatening war against each other, and right stuck in the middle in the crossfire was Israel. And Israel didn't know which way to go. Maybe we could align ourselves with Assyria. It all depends on who's going to win. We're going to, hook up with a winner. If Assyria wins, then we're really on the great side. If the Egyptians win, we're on that side. But we got to decide which one we're going with. And they spent a lot of effort trying to decide which side they were going to ally themselves with. If they didn't do either, one of those nations was going to invade them and set themselves up as conquerors and use the land of Israel as a staging area for their attack on the other nation. So they weren't even considering the fact that maybe God would protect them, and yet that's what the prophet kept telling them. Don't make an alliance with Egypt. Don't make an alliance with Assyria. Just trust in God. And then there were those who kind of agreed to that, but they said, well, we've got a powerful army. We've got a lot of weapons. We got our own chariots. We're a powerful army ourselves. We can fend them off. And they were trusting in their own power, in their own military might. In fact, that became their God, was their military might and their power. That's what it said, our gods to which our hands have made. I don't think it's just talking about idolatry. Otherwise it would say idolatry. It's saying what we made with our hands, our weapons of war that we made. We can defend ourselves. Three big mistakes they were making. One was wanting to trust the Assyrians, the other was wanting to trust the Egyptians, and the third was trying to do it on their own. In the end, none of it worked. They decided to side with the Assyrians, and or with the Egyptians, and when the Assyrians attacked, the Egyptians were a no-show, and the might of Israel just wasn't enough to protect them from the Assyrian invasion. But this is kind of being prophetic. It's speaking of what they would be saying in their hearts later on after they've been conquered, and that is, we can see now that Assyria couldn't save us, nor could Egypt, nor could even our work of our own hands, our own military, save us. For in the fatherless we find compassion. That's curious. In the fatherless we find compassion. Why speak of the fatherless here? Well, father is always known as the protector of, the male was the protector part. And so you don't ask for, the motherless, but the fatherless. There was no father that would protect them. But the word in Hebrew for fatherless, is actually the word for an orphan. And it's the word yatham. It means fatherless because an orphan is fatherless, but it means fatherless and motherless. You could say the word la'av, which would be fatherless, no father. But it didn't use that word. It used the word for an orphan, which means both fatherless and motherless. Why do the translators translate it as fatherless? Well, because they're looking at a context, and the context calls for a fatherless, not a motherless. But curiously, they are placing themselves on the level of orphans. They have no one to turn to other than God himself. And in God, they will find compassion. Well, there's another reason, I believe, why they refer to being orphans. Because the word for compassion is rakam. Now, rakam is compassion. Rakam is generally translated as mercy. But that doesn't come close to the full nature of rakam. I'm not saying it's a wrong translation. I'm just saying there's more to it than that. It's more than just compassion. It's more than just... when I think of compassion, I think of mercy. Mercy is like throwing yourself at the mercy of the court. It's like someone has power over you, and you're just pleading with them, don't hurt me, show me mercy. You go to your teacher and, teacher, have mercy on me. I didn't have a chance to study. Give me a chance. Mercy is a sense that you're helpless and you're crying out for that help. And compassion is pretty much the same thing. Have compassion on me. When I think of compassion, I'm thinking of these pictures I see of starving children in third world nations and a charitable organization looking for donations. And they're hoping to build compassion in you by showing you these pictures. Well, okay, that's rakam. But it's more than that. And one thing that hints at that is the fact they're calling themselves orphans. Because the word rakam, if you trace it all the way to its Semitic roots, it means the womb. And it's a picture of entering the safety of the mother's womb, of entering the love of the child that the mother has while the child is still in the womb and when the child's first born and comes out of the womb. It's a love that hasn't yet been offended. It's a love that, hasn't been challenged. As this child gets older, he challenges the mother's love. He says, I hate you, Mommy. He says, he rebels and I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to do what you say. And it breaks the mother's heart. This is the idea of rakam. It's a love that hasn't yet been challenged. It's a love that hasn't broken the mother's heart yet, or hasn't broken God's heart. Well, it's too late for us. I think every one of us broke God's heart. I know I have. Or is it really too late? Because, that's what the whole idea of born again means. Nicodemus asked, is it possible if someone entered a mother's womb and be born again? And Jesus basically is saying, look, I'm talking of something spiritual here. In the physical realm, no, you can't. You can't adopt a child and then make him into a little fetus and stick him back in the womb and let him be born into the family. But in the spiritual realm, that can be done. In the spiritual realm, you can enter the womb again and be born as if you've never broken God's heart, if you've never offended the heart of God. And I think that's why it uses the word fatherless or orphan, because it's saying we're ready, we're orphans. Let us identify, bring us back into the womb of God, bring us into the womb of God, and let us be born again. And in that, like a newborn baby. The newborn baby doesn't depend on the doctors, doesn't depend on the nurses, doesn't depend on anybody. It depends solely on that mother. When a mother holds that baby in her arms, the baby looks up at her. All he has is just love in his eyes for her, and she has love for him. And she feeds the child, she caresses the child, she nurtures the child. She loves that child with a love that hasn't been offended, hasn't been wounded. And that's the state that Israel wanted to bring themselves back to, saying, we are orphans. Take us into your womb again. Rakam. Take us into Rakam. Take us back into your womb. And let us be born into you, into your family. And we'll just be like that little baby in your arms. We won't be looking to our own abilities, our own ability to raise an army or a military. We won't be looking to another nation to protect us. We're just going to be that baby in your arms, and you're going to be our only protection. The only thing that we love, the only thing that we care about. In that verse, I see a real message for us. And that we need to recognize when we're born again, we're just a baby in the arms of Jesus. David in Psalms 18:1 used Rakam, the only place in the Old Testament where a human used it towards God. And he said, I love you, Lord. Translators don't know what to do with it. They don't know how else to translate it. And because how do you translate something that exists only in the realm of God? Something that only exists, a love that only exists in heaven. All we can do, David said, Rakam in a kal form, which is a simple verbal form. When God said Rakam, he uses it in a PL form, intensive form. That's beyond us. But one day it won't be. One day, when we are in heaven, and that old nature has finally joined up with our spirit, has been cleansed, purified, not filled with agendas, not filled with self-desires. It'll be in its perfect state. When we leave this body, we will understand what Rakam is all about. We will understand Rakam in the PO form. Best right now we can do is just in the simple Cal form. We can begin with Rakam, with loving God. And we will grow in that. The way you begin loving God is just recognize he's with you 24/7. You're born again. If he's with you, just as that mother's with that baby, as much as she can be after it's born 24/7, while still in the womb, that baby is with her all the time. They're never separated. And so too with God. When we're born again, brought into that womb of God, he's with us 24/7. So whatever you do, just do it as unto God.